Chapter 6. Sam's second round of waking up was far more pleasant than the first. The strange pain from before was gone, and the pulsating message of low energon had disappeared. Sam felt almost normal. That is, as normal as she could be given her situation. She doubted this body would ever really feel natural to her. But, at the very least, nothing hurt anymore, and the body was now responding efficiently. Sam didn't have to fight to make the slightest movements like before. It was just slow, as if the system were slowly getting used to working with her. It was new. It would take time. Even opening her eyes and trying to focus on the white ceiling overhead as it came into view through white static took less effort than she remembered it taking before. Giving a low, deep sigh, Sam let everything click into place. Just like before, there was no lingering tiredness or anything, but this time there was no hunger either. It just added to the feeling of being not human. Sam wasn't sure she liked it. At least the hunger felt somewhat like her old life. Granted, far from it, but the act, the remnant, the need to eat made her feel more like herself. And now that was gone. She hadn't even consumed anything. Grimacing, Sam turned her head slowly, looking around. It seemed as though she were in some sort of medbay or hospital just like last time. There were monitors with flowing charts and lines, beds for the injured and rolling carts filled with tools and strange breakers filled with pretty glowing liquids. She couldn't see much else besides that, but it seemed peaceful enough. There were hardly any lights on, just enough to be able to see everything shrouded in light shadows. It seemed like it was nighttime, and the fact that no one else was here seemed to add to that thought. Sam wondered if there was even a nighttime nurse. No one appeared to be patrolling around or checking on the other patients, if there even were any others. At the very least, this seemed like the same area she had lost consciousness in. Grunting in concentration and sitting up slowly, Sam worked herself upwards. While her body responded well, she was still getting used to how it worked compared to her human body. It was different, but different in a way she didn't know how to explain. It was almost like being drugged but not being mentally crippled by the chemicals. Or like being tired without actually being tired. She tried to overcompensate for the way her new limbs moved, more often than not intended to flail. Then there were the few times she undercompensated and ended up doing a pitiful flopping motion with them. It was like learning to drive a new vehicle. How much pressure to apply the brakes in a way that didn't jolt you? How much pressure do you put on the gas pedal to get you going without burning rubber or causing an accident? How big is the vehicle so you can avoid parking wrong or scraping the bottom? It was frustrating in a way that made her want to cry, but there was no wetness, no burn. She couldn't. A small mumble caught Sam's attention, and she turned her head to the side. There, laying in the bed next to her, curled on his side, was Bluestreak. He had one hand hanging off the edge as if he had been reaching for her before falling asleep. There hadn't been enough room on her bed, apparently, without laying him atop her. Which, she mused, probably would have been fine, but the doctors would disagree, she knew. They always did. Doctors disagreed with everything. Bluestreak let out a painful, quaking noise from deep within himself. Something partial between a squeak and a choke, with something more added in. It made Sam's chest tighten and twist. He seemed to be having a nightmare. If not for Bluestreak, would she have made it this far? Sam doubted it. Without someone else to go and live for, without something to do, a purpose, Sam didn't think she would have ever left that spot in the city among all those corpses. He had urged her into action and had eventually led her to safety. And Sam? Surely she was something to Bluestreak. She had helped him too. It was all she could do. He had given her something to live for and keep pushing forward in this strange foreign world. Leaning over and wincing at the weird flop her body did, Sam tried to reach him. But the bed Bluestreak was on was just out of reach, leaving her hanging off the side of her own. Scowling and righting herself, Sam swung her legs over the edge of her bed. "And just what do you think you're doing?" Sam froze at the decisively male voice that came from behind her. It sounded stern and startled the hell out of her. She had been certain there was no one else in the medbay. "Getting blue streak?" Hesitantly, the words fell from her lips. "Here, I'll get him. You lay back down and stay still." Bustling around the bed, a white and dark red bot came into view. He was more on the short side, but still taller than Jazz. Seemingly more stocky than any of the others Sam had seen so far, he carried himself with an air of confidence and a gruff take-no-shit attitude. But it wasn't in an arrogant or hostile way. Rather, it felt more like family, like that old grandpa or father who knew his place and what he had to do. Wise and roughed up, but compassionate under all those calluses. Sam slowly, with the help of her arms, pulled her legs back up onto the bed. She felt crippled somehow, as if her brain signals had been knotted off from the rest of her body. Signals were going through, they were just either extremely weakened or severely over the top. It was frustrating to say the least. The older bot scooped Blue Streak up, turned, and laid him against her chest gently. Sam drew her arms up limply, using them to cradle him with just enough firmness to keep him in place. Instantly, Blue Streak sighed and settled in, seeming to become soothed. "He likes the sound of your spark," the bot rumbled. "Seems he's already bonded with you." "My what?" Sam's brow furrowed. "Your spark?" His face scrunched up quizzically. Yeah." She decided to just go with it. I'm Sam, I know. I got the full report from Jazz." He waved a nonchalant hand. "I'm Ratchet, resident CMO of this band of hopeless ingrates. A pleasure to meet you, dear." Ratchet grunted, offering a crooked half-grin. "It's nice to meet you, Ratchet." Yeah, enough with the pleasantries, let's get back to your recuperating. You can't go from 0 energon to full without some problems. Your body still needs to adjust." Ratchet huffed, reaching out and wrapping one arm around her back while the other slid under her knees. Then, he carefully moved her down and onto her back where she could rest comfortably. "Why?" Sam could feel the need to go to sleep again crawling up along her, but it wasn't like when she was human. There was no being tired, it was just a lack of energy. "Help you?" Ratchet filled in the blanks of her question. "Why not? You and Blue here are just innocents in this." His eyes dulled from their brilliant blue to a dull, dusky blue-gray. The color change was dramatic and startling, but beautiful. "Thanks." It was all she could offer to him. "Don't mention it, Sam." Ratchet waved a hand. "How do you feel, by the way? I haven't had a chance to check up on you with all that's going on." He cleared his voice, correcting himself, but Sam knew well what he was covering up. The attacks. The war. Even now it waged around them, catching them up in a storm they couldn't fight. "I'm alright, just a little strange and off-center." Sam smiled at Ratchet, cradling Blue Streak a bit closer, protective. "That's to be expected." He nodded slowly, looking thoughtful. "You were almost completely drained of energon, and suddenly got filled up. We should have introduced it to you slowly, but..." Ratchet shook his head, and Sam got the feeling it had been an emergency. The CMO didn't seem the type to take unnecessary risks or harm his patients on purpose. "Ratchet, could I ask you something?" "You just did, but go for it, youngling." He grunted, turning slightly away to clean a few tools on a nearby rolling cart. Sam supposed he couldn't stay still for very long. He seemed the workaholic type. "Where am I?" "The Autobot base, hidden partially under the surface of the planet." Ratchet's voice became soft and tired, as if he were sick of being here. "Autobot?" Sam frowned. She wasn't familiar with that term. Ratchet turned and eyed her in confusion, as if not understanding why she didn't know. "Your processor wasn't damaged, was it? I already scanned it, but I could have missed something," he grumbled to himself. "I don't think so?" She wondered if telling him what had happened to send her here was okay, to tell him that she wasn't one of them, then shuddered as she imagined herself becoming a guinea pig to try and raise more of the dead to fight against their enemies. "No, not just yet." For now, she would get to know him and these Autobots. It was safer this way. Allies could be well and safe up until there was something to gain that they couldn't refuse. There are two sides to the war. Ratchet lulled back into mindlessly working while filling her in. Autobots, that's us, the good guys. And Decepticons, also known as the scum of the universe. He gave an angry scoff, as if their very name pissed him off to his core. We've been fighting a long time, nearly killed the planet in the process. Ratchet sighed, becoming sad and quiet again. Or at least, Sam thought it was a sigh. He drew in a breath and let it out like it was. Decepticons, Sam mused, remembering what had happened to her in Blue Streak and being thankful they hadn't been caught. They were the ones that attacked us, right? Yes. Disgusting, honorless scraplets that they are. Ratchet gave a gruff growl as he cleaned his tools a little more forcefully. Attacking an innocent sparkling and a defenseless Femma. The nerve! Sam couldn't help a small smile. For all his grouching and barking, Ratchet seemed honestly kind and compassionate. Even if it turned out she couldn't trust the rest of these Autobots, she could at least, with certainty, trust Ratchet. Even if she had only just met him. I'm sorry. It's just been a long war. The CMO heaved and shook his head slowly, setting his now clean tools down. Too long, with too much lost. But that's enough for today. He turned back to her. But Sam had more questions. A tingling curiosity gnawing at the back of her mind insisted on it. She wanted to know where she was, more about the world she was now lost in. No, you recharge now, Ratchet stated firmly. Recharge? Confusion had Sam scrunching her forehead up. Rest? Shut down? Ratchet frowned worriedly. Maybe your core processor was corrupted sometime during the attack. I'll take a look at it later and make sure. Or it could be something with a spark. He mumbled to himself. I'll look into both, he decided. Okay. Sam laid her head back, feeling a little nervous. It sounded like he was going to poke and prod around at her body. Even if it wasn't really her body, it was still the one she was residing in currently. Borrowing. But there was also the thought, the reassurance that Ratchet wouldn't hurt her. Not on purpose. I won't let anything happen to you. Promise. He rumbled somewhere behind her head, and Sam eased a little more. Ratchet seemed like a man... alien? Robot? Of his word. Just try and get some recharge for now. I'll look after you in Blue Streak. She could hear him fiddling with something in the distance, as well as grumbling to himself about something she couldn't quite understand. It seemed he was prone to talking to himself. Sam would have laughed if the strange exhaustion hadn't crept over her in a heavy wave, pushing her down into sleep firmly. There was something so pleasant about sleeping with Blue Streak against her chest, and her arms. The lull of Ratchet's gruff voice only added to the sensation. Sam drifted to sleep again, to the sound of his grumbling and Blue Streak's soft, sleeping whirring.